Now, Joel, you've sold 400 plus units a year as a broker owner. So you really do know what it's like to live in the chaos. And when you meet a team that's stuck, what's usually really holding them back from executing consistently?
For some teams, it's a lack of clarity, either clarity on the vision, where are we going, or clarity on the strategy. What exactly are we going to do to pursue that vision?
People with big ideas think every idea is a good idea. And so they're trying to work, and you're kind of jailbreaking their mind and saying, we can get to it, but we're not going to do it right now. How do you have that conversation? And then what does that follow-up sequence look like, or that follow-through sequence look like as they're trying to adjust to this new normal, if you will?
The only way it works is we've got clarity on the vision. We've got clarity on the strategy. And then when you try to go off course, I can tie it back to one of those two things.
I want to talk about selecting a niche. Most agents haven't selected a niche because they're worried about making the wrong decision. They want to go luxury, but they don't want to alienate first-time home buyers. Yeah. How do you deal with that?
First of all, I think it's super important to pick somewhere to focus. The narrower, the better, while still being a big enough opportunity for you to hit your goals. It can be anything. You have to make sure that
most people are building a business that depends solely on them, and they wonder why they're stuck. They've got big goals, but no rhythm, no structure, and no margin to grow. Now, if that's you, this podcast episode is your blueprint to scale. Welcome back to the Leverage Lounge. I'm your host, Mike Collier, and today I'm talking to a man who knows what real leverage looks like inside of a fast-growing real estate business. Joel Perso is the founder of Growth-Centric, a fractional COO firm that helps seven-figure real estate teams build operational systems, weekly execution rhythms, and scale-ready infrastructure without the overhead of hiring a full-time executive. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Joel, welcome to the Leverage Lounge. Let's get right into it.
All right. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, listen, you've helped scale teams to 7 and 8 figures using a fractional COO model. Now, for those who've never heard of that, can you break that down? Why is this such a powerful lever for real estate teams?
Yeah. So fractional is basically part-time executives. Most small business owners have heard of a fractional CFO, chief financial officer. Some people have heard of fractional CMO for marketing, and we're just really starting to see a wider adoption of CTOs, COOs. So for teams who either can't afford or just don't need a full-time executive, fractional is an incredible option to get so much of the benefit without the full-time cost and overhead that comes with a high-level executive.
And why do you feel like we're heading in that direction? I feel like. Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. One of the reasons I started the firm, so I've been a full-time COO for just about 10 years over 3 different companies. And I started Growth-Centric at the beginning of this year because I'm seeing this trend happen in small business. So when I say small business, I'm talking about under $5 million. So pretty small businesses. They're worried about cash flow, worried about profitability, and a lot of times gun shy for making a really important hire. But you need a lot of what those executives are going to bring. So for me, it's going to be a major part of the next 5-10 years in small business here for a couple reasons. One, something that you're super familiar with is VAs. John Kitchens has a great take on this about the pandemic unlocking the global workforce, and he's spot on with it. The amount of talent that flooded the market 2020, 2021 really changed everything for how we think about virtual talent. And then being forced into working remotely so much, the number one objective that we used to have was just gone instantly, which was, well, I'm not sure if that can be done remotely. Well, now we know that just about anything can be. So that objection's gone. The talent is there. So the VA trend is a major kind of precursor to the fractional trend. And then the second big one's AI. So we're going to be able to get so much done with AI. Now you've got VAs that are powered by AI. You've got staff powered by AI. A lot of this just stuff that your executives used to do is not going to be necessary anymore. So when you hire fractional, you can get the experience, you can get the ability to execute, you can get that kind of been there, done that skill set without the 150, 200, 250,000 price tag on it.
Yeah. And I think that's important, man. I truly believe in the power of virtual assistants. That's what powers this podcast, powers my business. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But thanks for breaking that down, because I think the audience is like, fractional COO. How do I even fit into that? Keep listening, because I think you're going to really get a lot out of what we talk about today. Now, Joel, you've sold 400 plus units a year as a broker owner. So you really do know what it's like to live in the chaos. And when you meet a team that's stuck, What's usually really holding them back from executing consistently?
One thing especially, but for some teams, it's a lack of clarity. Either clarity on the vision, where are we going, or clarity on the strategy. What exactly are we going to do to pursue that vision? What I see way more than that is it's a problem with execution. So most teams and team leaders, they've been good at sales and marketing. That part's come fairly easy to them. They tend to attract agents and talent to them. So they've been able to grow, but they're not good at executing. So we've got incredible amounts of information out there, whether it's on social media, on all the courses, the events that we attend. There's usually no shortage of, I know what to do. The problem is, okay, I either don't know how to do it or I'm trying to do it and it's just not working. So it's almost always an execution problem. And that's one of the major ways that fractional leadership differs from kind of traditional coaching or consulting, is that we're rolling up our sleeves. I'm on your org chart. I am building things in your business. It's not a one call per week. It's helping with the meeting rhythm. And ultimately, like I said, helping with execution. Execution it's an organizational skill that has to be developed. And there's principles behind it, just like there's principles behind most things. And if you don't know those principles and you're not practiced at applying those principles, you're going to stall out and fail a lot of times. And that's what we see most often, is it's a failure to execute.
That's good, man. So you said that execution is a skill that can be learned. I think most people just feel like they're failing. Why am I going? And I go to all these conferences and I go and I take massive notes and I have great intention. But even if I start executing, I don't finish. But you said it's a skill. So what's the first system or rhythm that you put in place that usually creates that traction that they're looking for?
I'll get to that in just a sec. But before we even get to that, one of the major failure points, and you'll appreciate this, you've been in all of the rooms with all of the big producers, all of the big teams. Most people are still trying to do too much. So you've got too many priorities, too many projects, and it's just a recipe for failure. So again, getting back to the value of fractional is, let's say, you and I are working together and you're like, hey, Joel, I want to do this. We got to execute on the podcast and I want to grow my YouTube and I want to focus on this new lead gen and we got to recruit. And part of the value that I can bring as kind of a strategic partner is just saying like, hey, slow down. Let's talk about what's most important to do. What's going to get us to our goals the fastest. Let's focus on one, maybe two things, and let's execute at a really high level. So just the fact that you've got somebody with experience to come alongside you and say, hey, trying to do 7 things is a recipe for failure. Let's focus on 2. So even before we get to like, how are we actually going to do that? That's always the first step, is just focusing on the wildly important things. It's an incredible book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. I can share those 4 principles here, but the first one is, again, it's about fewer priorities. I love that old Jim Collins quote, says if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any. And I think that's so true. So can we get it down to 1, maybe 2 strategic priorities every 90 days that we're going to focus on? So that's the first thing, is what's really important. What are the priorities? The second thing about how we start, actually executing, is we start to focus on the leading indicators. So something that people get wrong a lot is we focus too much on the lagging indicators. Lagging indicators are about results. Leading indicators are about activity. When we're starting to execute on something, we want to make sure that the activity is going to be driving that result in the end. So we focus on a leading indicator. Easy example here is calls. Like the number of dials you're making, that's a leading indicator, right? We know that if you make this many dials, it should lead to this result. Actually getting the listing, that's a lagging indicator. That doesn't really tell us if the system is working or not yet. So we focus on the leading indicators to try to figure out, all right, is what we're executing on actually working? The third thing is we have to have a compelling scoreboard. What are we tracking? How are we tracking? How are we reporting on it? And then what are we looking at on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? So then that leads right into the fourth one, which is a cadence of accountability. So those are the 4 disciplines of execution. We can kind of, dive into any of those if you want to, but
no, yeah, that's perfect. So can you walk us through what a powerful weekly execution cycle actually looks like?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan, especially in small businesses, and especially if you have a couple people on the team who are contributing to whatever you're executing on. I'm a huge fan of weekly execution cycles. A lot of Lean or Scrum or some of those kind of project management systems, they call them sprints. And I've kind of adopted that too. So we call them weekly sprints. We've got a meeting that happens every Monday. We call our sprint meeting. And we're going to look at, what are the priorities that we're trying to execute on? What are the tasks that we need to accomplish in order to move that project forward? And what can we commit to over the next 5 business days here that's going to do that? And so you'll have sprint meetings where it's like, hey, not much else going on in the business. We get a lot done this week. Some weeks are busy and you're going to get a little bit less done, but we do it every single week. We review the progress from last week. We talk about what we can commit to in the upcoming week, and then everybody just gets to work. When you start each week with the sprint planning and sprint meeting, you get a lot of clarity. Again, back to one of the other reasons people fail with execution. Everybody knows exactly what they're doing this week. And so the accountability is easy because we've got it written down somewhere. Could be as simple as written down in an email or in a Slack channel. What exactly everybody's going to do this week? When does it need to be completed by? And what does done even mean? So sometimes we get off course because what does it really mean to, okay, how do we know we executed, right? Like, what does it actually mean to be done with something? And so that's part of that planning process is what does it mean to be done with this? Is it just that I built it, or is it that I trained the people on it and then I checked to make sure that it was working properly? And then I put in the accountability cadence at the end. So that idea of what does done mean is a really important piece.
Do you feel like the biggest problem is the fact that a lot of people just don't know how to do what needs to be done, or maybe they do know how to do what needs to be done? I think about the quadrant that we talk about a lot of times. I know John Kitchens, when I was coaching with him, that's one of the things we talked about often is like the competence cycle, right? Like, you might be good at something, but should you be the one that's doing it? And then there's certain things that you're doing that you're not good at, but you're still doing it anyway because it has to be done. And so what do you see in that quadrant, Joel? Is it that they're just doing way too much of stuff that they shouldn't be doing themselves?
Yeah. Bringing in the VAs is a great point right now, specifically, because even the entrepreneurs who are great at starting and building things, and we know a lot of entrepreneurs are great starters, a lot of them are even good, like mostly executors, right? Like they can get the documentation done, they can train the team on it, they can shoot the Loom video, and then we check back in a few months and find out that it's not happening. Like they're not doing the thing that I told them to do, right? We lost it somewhere. And the reason that happens is because, okay, Mike, you built something, you implemented it. Who's going to manage it? And so if you're the one who's managing it, every time you build something, you're adding more to your plate in terms of managing. So if you don't
have a new job every time.
Exactly. And so a lot of entrepreneurs will end up with, okay, you execute at a really high level, but you don't move the management off of your plate. You don't delegate that. You end up trying to manage 30 processes yourself, pulling reports yourself, checking the KPIs yourself, whatever it might be, right? Filling out the checklist yourself even. When it's executed on, when it's implemented, you have to get the management off of your plate. And so that's where what is done look like, the scoreboard, the accountability cadence, those pieces become really important because you should not be managing the things that you built. Somebody else has to be managing those. Building them is the skill. That's the hard part. Managing them, if you do it right, should be pretty easy, which again is why it's so powerful to bring VAs into your business because, okay, we implemented and now we moved it off of my plate. Now somebody's managing it. Now what I'm getting is the scoreboard and then the accountability cadence. And the easiest way to do that is, hey, we're going to have a one-on-one once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. We're going to pull up the scoreboard. We're going to talk about it. Hey, are we on track? Great. Are we off track? Let's talk about why we're off track. And that's the accountability cadence. And they call it a cadence for a reason, is because it never stops. You always have to be inspecting those things. Maybe it only has to happen once a quarter, once a year for some things, but most things we have to be looking at them regularly. You're not doing it. They're managing it. They're pulling the data. They're providing the report, but you're reviewing it together in your one-on-ones. That could be, 10 minutes to check all of these things that you built and implemented. Talk about leverage. All of these things that you built and implemented in a 15-minute one-on-one, you're making sure that they're all still functioning properly. And so, yeah, it's a huge piece of why entrepreneurs fail is, okay, we did execute, but it fell off. It's not working anymore. And why not? Because probably because you're still trying to manage it.
So I fell into that trap of, I am that visionary. I have these ideas, I'm a creative. And so I have all of these ideas, high personality. So I have these ideas of like what it's going to look like and feel like. And so I would come up with a lot of these ideas, even in conversations like I'm talking to someone like yourself. I jot these ideas down and you start finding yourself implementing more ideas and you keep on coming up with these ideas. And before you know it, you're like an idea central. There's more ideas than you can truly ever actually execute on, at least well. And so it sounds like, Joel, you're able to help somebody like myself or a leader who's listening get out of the clutter. And it's like, all right, what do we need to be focusing on? Like you said, maybe it's one or two things that we need to be focusing on, at least for this short amount of time. How do you have that conversation, man? Because people with big ideas think every idea is a good idea. And so they're trying to work and you're kind of jailbreaking their mind and saying, we can get to it, but we're not going to do it right now. How do you have that conversation? And then what does that follow-up sequence look like, or that follow-through sequence look like as they're trying to adjust to this new normal, if you will?
First off, the hard part about guys like you is the ideas are mostly good. That's what makes it difficult to decide what to do, or that's what makes you want to try to do them all, is because there's not a lot of bad ideas in there. There's mostly good ideas, but you're right, we still can't do them all. So the only way it works, so whether I'm a full-time COO, a fractional, or, we're just having a conversation, the only way it works is we've got clarity on the vision, we've got clarity on the strategy. And then when you try to go off course, I can tie it back to one of those two things. I have to be able to say, hey, Mike, that doesn't help us execute on the strategy we agreed on for this quarter. Or, hey, Mike, that does not help us achieve the vision that you said is super important to you. The only way it works is if we know where we're going, and then I can help tie it back to, hey, that doesn't get us there, or that pulls us off course, or maybe that just slows us down because it's too much. But if we don't have clarity there first, it's really, really hard for a head of operations or a COO to have that conversation, because, well, why not? Like, why isn't this a good idea? It sounds like a great idea. It's like, well, yeah, I guess it is a good idea. What am I going to say to that, right? I have to be able to tie it back to something that you either created, like the vision, or the strategy, like we made that together, but you agreed this is the strategy. And now it's up to you. And a lot of times this is a leadership maturity journey that people have to go on, is, okay, I'm willing to be held accountable and say, yeah, you're right, that doesn't get us to where we want to go. Or, yeah, you're right, we can't execute on all of these things yet. So that's how we have to have the conversation. And then what do we do with all those ideas? Again, I borrow another principle from the Scrum methodology, which is mostly a software development, project management thing, but I found it to be really helpful in small business, which is the idea of the backlog. All of the ideas go on the backlog. And that could just be a piece of paper. It could be a spreadsheet. It could be, again, a Slack channel. Put it on the backlog. Put it on the backlog. Hey, we're not going to do that right now. Put it on the backlog. And then when we get to our quarterly strategic planning, we can pull the backlog out and say, hey, do any of these ideas that we had over the last quarter or last year, whatever, make sense for us to make one of our few priorities now? And maybe the answer is, yeah, hey, it wasn't the right time to do Leverage Launch podcast last year, but it was the right time to do it this year. So that could be, hey, that was on the backlog for a while. I know you were thinking about it for probably years, right, of launching a podcast like this. So that stayed on the backlog. Maybe the backlog was just in your head at the time. Right. But what that does too is it gives the visionary the peace of mind that, hey, we're not going to lose all my good ideas. Like, they're still there. But it also gives the head of operations or the integrator the ability to say, hey, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying, let's put it on the backlog and talk about it a little bit later. Because right now we already know what we have to do.
That's cool, because you feel like you're not abandoning your babies. You know what I'm saying? When we have these brain babies, we're like, it's so cute. Like, take a look at it. It's beautiful. And you're like, yeah, it's beautiful. We're not going to tend to that right now.
Yeah.
So when that happens, you have all of these ideas. Let's back up, because something else that you mentioned, when you start this conversation with these teams, are you taking them through like a clarity exercise? Or because you ask, what's the goal? The goal of any sales team is to sell more. And so it's like, all right, okay, I know we want to sell more. What are we selling and where do we want to get to? And I imagine it's kind of reverse engineering, but there's a lot of nuances in that. I could turn on the lead faucet over here and start generating more leads and get more sales, but I could also start my YouTube channel and I could get more sales that way. And then I can also start a team, low level to high level producing agents who are helping to generate more revenue. And so again, all of these are good ideas. How do you help a team leader or even an agent, let's just say, decipher which one is the next best step?
Yeah. So again, it starts off tying it back to the vision. This is a super important piece for especially the team leaders out there, especially the team leaders who want to grow, is you have to decide what you want your business to be. What kind of people do you want to work with? Like, do you want to have 100 agents? Do you want to have 10 agents? Do you want to have a huge staff that you have to develop leaders to manage? Do you want to run really lean? Do you want to focus on a higher price point? Do you want to focus on volume? I mean, there's 100 questions. So it just has to start with you deciding what kind of business you want. And that's the core of what a vision is. Fast forward 3 years, tell me everything about your business. What does your office space look like? What part of town is it in? What kind of car did you drive to get there? Do you have an in-person assistant greet you when you walk in the office? Do you not? Do you only have VAs? What kind of meetings do you have? Does your sales huddle have, again, 100 agents there, or do you just have a few? There's just all of those things that you have to decide first. And then the integrator, myself, or maybe your full-time head of operations, like, okay, great. Now we can help design how to get there. And so now, again, we have some clarity there. One of the questions we'll ask, what strategies are going to be most in alignment with that? So if you don't want to manage a bunch of agents, well, then I'm not going to suggest that we go all out on recruiting 25 agents this quarter. That's not going to be. But on the flip side, if you're like, yeah, I want a huge team, as many agents as I can, that fires me up, that gets me excited. Great. We got to design a really great recruiting system to keep, people coming in regularly through the door. And same kind of thing on the lead gen side. What's more in alignment? Is your personal brand really important to you? Then yeah, absolutely. We have to be on YouTube. Is that a little bit less important? Could we accomplish what we want to do by buying leads from Zillow, from pay-per-click, whatever that is? Has to be in alignment. And then part of it will be, what's the opportunity? Are you going to be the 8th biggest YouTube channel in your market when you start off? Well, maybe we should still do it, but maybe we can't rely on that to be a major source right away. That's going to take more time to start overtaking those. Maybe there's no Zillow zip codes available in your market, and that's not going to be an option for you, right away. So some of it's going to be, what's the opportunity? Again, all that stuff comes out in the strategic planning process of getting clear on what we're going to do.
Gotcha. Because there's also capital restraints.
For sure.
Before I even started my team, I started doing Zillow leads, and I was paying $4,000 a month for Zillow leads. And the zip code that I was getting the Zillow leads in, they were like, I got 10 a month, roughly $400 a lead. I'm like, this for me wasn't sustainable. I mean, they were decent leads. I ended up kind of breaking even. I know some do extremely well with Zillow, but I think today's way of working may have changed some of how people are using that. I know Zillow Flex is a big thing, but nonetheless, my point is there are capital restrictions as well as personnel restrictions. And so you might not be able to do it all. You also can't pay for it all. Yeah. And so where do you see leaders lose momentum most often? Like as they're going down this line, you talked a little bit about this. You said they kind of stop. They look up and they see that nobody's actually doing the vision, the thing that we set out from the clarity report that we did together. But even if they are, they're going and it becomes part of the business. Where do you see them losing momentum most often? And then how do you coach them through it? I imagine it's reminding them of what the goal is. Is that right?
Yeah. The more you can tie it back to the vision, which again, everybody on your team should know that vision. Everybody on your team should be able to recite it because you're asking them to be a part of chasing that vision. So a lot of times it's vision. A lot of times it's accountability. The agents just sort of slowly stopped making their calls. Maybe it took 6 months, but all of a sudden, if you weren't paying attention or having the accountability conversations, you tanked your pipeline because our activity dropped or the staff wasn't doing things the way they were supposed to do. They weren't filling out the reports the right way. They weren't, completing their daily checklists or whatever it is. So a lot of it comes down to accountability. Once we design those systems, we implement, a lot of it's accountability where we fall off. Even if we're moving forward, we could be moving straight forward, but we're kind of zigzagging. We're like, okay, should we run Indeed ads to recruit? Oh, what if we did a incentive plan for our agents? Well, we're not going to do Indeed anymore. Okay, well, the incentive plan for our agents to recruit didn't work. So we're zigzagging, and maybe we're making progress along the way, but that's a lot of work to be zigzagging, right? So if we're really, again, more clear, executing at a higher level, we can just move straight forward as opposed to just losing momentum, zigzagging. A little bit of that's always going to happen. Some things aren't going to work as well, and we have to be able to recognize that and adjust for it. So some degree of zigzagging is just kind of reality. You can lose a lot of momentum by zigzagging.
I think about a rocket ship. May have heard that analogy of like, there's so many calculations that are being done per second as a rocket ship is getting out of orbit and headed into space. And if it's just like a couple of degrees off, then it ends up in wherever, in Neptune instead of headed over to Mars. You're right. There are adjustments that have to be made. Otherwise, you end up in a completely different orbit. But at the same time, you never see a rocket ship zigzagging its way into space, making quick corrections along the way. I want to talk about selecting a niche, because this is also one of the big decisions that has to be made before you can turn on the lead generation faucet and start whatever it is. Like you said, you got to kind of decide who you want to work with, who you're talking to. And I know for the longest time for me, it was really hard deciding on what my niche should be because I didn't want to alienate anybody. And I also was like, man, I don't want to choose a niche. And then what if I'm wrong about the niche? What if I start putting all this time, attention, and energy into this niche and then find that nobody's buying over here? I should have been over there. I should have been doing that. Most agents haven't selected a niche because they're worried about making the wrong decision. They want to go luxury, but they don't want to alienate first-time home buyers. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I think it's super important to pick somewhere to focus. The narrower, the better, while still being a big enough opportunity for you to hit your goals, right? If you can accomplish all of your goals and live the life of your dreams on 100 deals a year, then you have the ability to niche down a lot further. So bring it back to clarity again. Where are we going? Are we doing 100 deals a year? Are we doing 1,000? Because that's going to change things a little bit. So it's super important. In the book, Story Brand, Donald Miller says, you're going to be known for one thing. Whether you pick it or they pick it, or you try to do 5 things, you're going to be known for one thing. And so, having control over what that thing is going to be, I think is really important. You can niche down geographically. Hey, we want to be known for dominating this area. You can niche down on a market segment. We want to be known for military, for divorce, for probate, for all these different things. We want to be known, there's a Harley Davidson guy in my market. That's his niche. Harley Davidson, he goes after bikers. Again, it can be anything. You have to make sure that market that you're niching down on, again, is big enough to get you to your goals And then you just need to remember, you're not going to say no to all the other business. Maybe you lose something now and then from somebody who, oh, I didn't think you would work with somebody like me. Like, sure, that will probably happen. What's more likely to happen is you become known as an expert in something and people are drawn to experts and they'll probably call you anyway, even though you're not exactly matching the niche or they're not really a part of your niche. So I do think it's really important. If you're really unsure, start with the geographic and say, what kind of houses do I want to sell? What kind of clients do I want to work with? And where are they? Now we go do some research. We find some neighborhoods that have a high enough turnover rate and are going to get us enough deals. And then we start building it. And it doesn't mean you have to cancel all your Zillow zip codes that are in other zip codes on day one. It's going to take a while to build that brand, that recognition, that expertise for whatever your niche is. So that's a long-term play. But gosh, if you're going to be in the business for the next 10 years, start doing it because it will pick up momentum like an avalanche.
Absolutely. And another way to do that is really look at past tells the future. Who have you been selling to? Sometimes you look at it and you go, wait a minute, I did this. I found that 90% of my business is relocation business. These are people coming in from other states who find me on YouTube or social media. And they're like, I love that guy. They reach out to me. And so my niche has really become relocation specialist for people who want to live within what I call the Disney bubble, which is about 20 to 30 minutes outside of Walt Disney World, because I live 10 minutes away from Walt Disney World. I worked at Disney for 12 years. I'm a Disney guy. So Disney people get me. I try to bring the Disney guest service into the real estate transaction. And as soon as I say that, my people, they completely get that. Serving as a Disney ambassador when I did, it's like people who love Disney understand that language and it resonates with them. It speaks to them because of the zip code that I live in. Even my average price point is pretty high. So it helps, but there's also, I don't live in the same neighborhood as Tiger Woods and Shaquille O'Neal and all of them did, but that's literally like 10 minutes up the street for me. I could go into the luxury market if I wanted to, which is relatively easy as far as geographic is concerned, but there's a lot of other decisions that have to be made before I do that, right? And so I think it's a great conversation because I teach a class called Riches Are in the Niches out of my office in Orlando. And we talk a lot about this. We talk about the occupational niche, the geographical niche. There's so many different types of niches that you can choose. And I think for a lot of agents, this conversation is truly helpful.
Yeah, I think a really important part on niche right now, I'm sure you include this in your class, so this might be a little redundant for your audience, but the narrower your niche, the more insulated you're going to be against what AI is going to be able to do to your business. I just use this example on a call with kitchens. I live in a specific subdivision and there's a group of people right now getting ready to make a play to get one of the bylaws changed in our HOA doc. That's not public anywhere. Nobody's going to know that. I know that. So if you're looking to buy a house in my neighborhood right now, I can give you information that nobody else can. Probably no other agents, but certainly not any AI right now. So hyper local knowledge is going to be maybe one day AI kind of make a dent in that, but it's just not the same right now. So hyper local knowledge is going to be a protection against AI. Just the more embedded you are into whatever your niche is, if it's a hobby or an occupation, it's going to be harder to disrupt that type of niched expertise than it is for the people who just own a bunch of Zillow zip codes.
I couldn't agree with that more. That guy that's in your hometown, you guys must have a lot of friggin' Harleys driving around your hometown for that to be his niche.
World headquarters for Harley Davidson's in Milwaukee, so he does have a lot.
All right, that makes more sense. I'm like, man, that's a really specific niche, but I mean, I guess there's a lot of Harley drivers, but that's cool. Okay, that makes more sense.
He's got a real nice business, but he's not going to do 1,000 transactions off Harley riders, but he'll probably do 50 as a solo agent and have an incredible business. So there we go. So it's just a matter of what he's trying to do. What's the goal? Like you said, maybe he's not trying to sell 100, 200, or 1,000 homes a year, but like you said, 50 to 60 to 70 homes, then he can do that and really niche down and have fun doing it. That's the thing. So many team leaders are scaling, but at the cost of their time, their health, their families. There's so many top performers that are out there who are on their second, third, fourth marriage. They're the best agent in their city, but there was a cost to be the boss. So let's talk about this. What does sustainable scaling actually look like? I love it. It's a great question. So I'll define for you guys how I think about scaling. The difference for me between scaling and growing is that scaling is repeatable and predictable. So we can grow haphazardly, chaotically. You can grow and grow big and grow forever without ever really scaling. And so a lot of times those people, you're burnt out, your business is a mess, you're making a ton of money, or you're having all the outward success. A lot of those businesses are growing and are not scaling because they haven't figured out how to make it repeatable and predictable. Easy example of this is, hey, we know exactly what our conversion rate is on our pay-per-click leads. I can make that repeatable and predictable by increasing budget or by going into a similar market where we expect similar results for that. Now I know what kind of business to expect. I can predict what kind of staffing needs. Hey, at what point does our TC process break because we have too many deals? Great. I can get get ahead of that and hire one ahead of time? At what point are we going to need additional marketing support, whatever that is? So you can make it repeatable and predictable. And that's the fundamentals of scaling. You can do the same thing on recruiting. Hey, we know that when I talk to this many agents, I'm going to set this many appointments and I'm going to hire this many agents on the team. And we know that an average agent on our team does this many deals. Now it's predictable and it's repeatable, and that's how we scale. Another key component is it has to be a lever you can pull in order to scale. You have to be able to move faster if you want to in order to really be scaling again, or we're back to growing. And there's nothing wrong with growing. That's what most businesses do. But if you can figure out how to make it scalable and repeatable, you have a massive head start over everybody else who doesn't understand that yet. Now we're back to, okay, how fast do you want to move based on where you want to go?
That's really good. I hadn't thought about that from a lever standpoint. In order to be able to call it a lever in scalability, you need to be able to ramp that thing up if you need to, or scale it back if you need to. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just growth, right?
Yeah. Nothing wrong with growth. That's what most people do. But I do believe there's a difference between growing and scaling.
I absolutely agree. So what's one habit or maybe a mindset shift that you would say is absolutely necessary if somebody wants to build something that doesn't depend on them?
The absolute number one, and you don't even need to read the book because it's a pretty simple principle, who, not how. Absolute number one. And the who, not how mindset is not just about hiring people. It's about who can help me with this, who can solve this for me, who can do this for me. It doesn't have to be a hire. It could be a VA, could be AI, could be a fractional executive, could be a mentor, could be a coach. Start thinking, all right, who can help me solve this problem, or who can do this for me? And you'll immediately start to look at things differently and start to realize, like, I don't need to do that. Maybe I even have the person on my team who could actually just do that for me. And you need to get better at delegating. Delegating is part of who, not how. Hiring is part of who, not how. I think coaching and mastermind groups are part of who, not how. Who's literally done this before that can come in and help. That's a major piece of what I'm doing with clients right now and why they hire me is you've done it before. Come help me do it now. And they bring me in to help them, accomplish whatever they're trying to accomplish. So that's the number one is who, not how. Read the book if you want to. It's a good book, but the principle is not super complicated. It's just, that's the first question you ask when you have a problem is who can help me with this, who can solve this, or who can just do this for me.
One of the things I found about that book that I loved is the concept of even sometimes your who needs a who. We tend to sometimes, we have all these ideas that we talked about and all these strategic initiatives that have to get done in order to accomplish a goal. And so sometimes agents will hire their assistant or they'll hire an ops manager and then they just dump. This is really bad, especially in the VA world with virtual assistants. They're like, oh, I can pay you very little money and give you a ton of stuff to do. I'm going to have you checking my emails and I'm going to have you doing my calendar, my social media. You're going to be making my phone calls. I need you to be my ISA. Like, they're just dumping it on them and then they're ready to fire them or they're upset that they're not getting the traction that they expected. Yeah. And it's just, I've seen it happen time and time again. And I always try to caution people before they ever hire a virtual assistant, especially like, don't do that. The fact that you're actually paying them a lot less means that you can get more of them to be specialized. So get a social media manager and that's all they do. Get a client success manager and that's all they do. They shouldn't be doing a little bit of everything. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think what you just said, you said it I might be paraphrasing here, but like when sometimes the who needs a who, one of my favorite ways to use virtual assistants is in supporting the rest of your leadership team or your key people. Your TC is getting busy, get them a VA who's a junior TC. Your sales manager is getting busy, get your sales manager an assistant who's a VA. Your head social media person is getting busy, get them somebody who's just making graphics or focused on reels, whatever it is. But VAs are the ultimate like who for your who's, because they're incredible source of leverage, but use them as leverage for the rest of your people too, not just for yourself.
Correct. Man, that's fire right there. All right. So let's get to our lightning round. I got a lightning round for you, man. I'm going to ask you quick fire questions. Just answer in one sentence or less. Give me what you got. Ready for this?
I'm ready. I'm not usually good at one sentence, but I'm going to do my best.
It could be a few sentences. There's grace in the leverage lounge. All right. The first one. The biggest mistake you see in hiring ops people?
Thinking they're motivated the same way as salespeople are motivated.
Okay. Well, that was good, but tell me more. I might have you explain some of these. So you can give me the answer in one sentence and then we're going to dive into it a little bit.
Operations people tend to value stability more than upside. So having a higher base salary versus large incentives is typically more effective. Thinking that they're going to get all fired up, kind of rah for the next thing. That's not how it works. Doing a short-term contest, that's not going to get them fired up. They want stability. They want clarity. They want to know what success looks like. They want to know if they're doing a good job. And then they want to be left alone a little bit so they can just do their work at a high level. And obviously that's painting with broad strokes, but that's the biggest thing. Don't treat your ops people like you treat your salespeople.
That's good, man. That's a good nugget right there. One system that every 7-figure team should have, but they don't.
Dialed in CRM. Everybody's got a CRM, but most people are not using it nearly to its potential. And that's where you should go. You can get a long, long way off an incredible CRM built the right way and used the right way.
This is a hot take. Do you agree that every CRM should be able to record calls and have some AI transcription? And what are your thoughts about AI in CRMs these days?
Yeah, either they have to have it built in or they have to be easy to link with and through open APIs or whatever integrations they're going to use. But yeah, you have to be able to plug those types of tools in. You have to be able to have call scoring, just like you can have lead scoring, AI listening in, transcribing things, coaching your agents for you. But I think there's a higher level to this question that's really important, and you should be thinking about it now, which is you're going to be able to take all of those recordings and just train an AI on it. And now you've got your own custom AI that's going to be able to coach your team. You should be recording all of your team meetings too, all of your conversations you have with your assistant. All of that stuff should be recorded. We should be training LLMs on them so that they can become our own internal, highly customized AIs.
Man, that's good. I like that a lot. All right. Book or podcast you always recommend to team leaders?
For podcast, it's The Knowledge Project by Shane Parrish. He's the one he does the Farnham Street blog. His whole thing is taking world-class performers and learning what he says, the best of what other people have already figured out and bringing it to his audience. So he's got a wide-ranging guest. It's not real estate specific. It's not even business specific, but it's incredible. Books, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give you two. Since we talked so much about vision, there's a book called Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold. It was the light bulb vision book for me of how to help somebody go about thinking through and then articulating their vision, which is so critical. And then the second one, I don't think this will be a shock to anybody who's been listening to me in kitchens or you, but The AI-Driven Leader right now.
That's the one I'm reading right now.
I'm going through it for a second time. Jeff Woods, Jeff with a G. How should we be thinking about AI? How should we be integrating into our business? It's a fantastic starting point to a question which I get all the time. I'm sure you do too, which is just like, where do I even start? What do I even do with AI? So if you're not sure, start by reading AI-Driven Leader.
That's good. All right. Last lightning round question. What's leverage look like to you in one word?
In one word? Oh man. In one word, it's more.
All right. Talk about it.
I want to do more with less. That's my favorite definition of leverage and how I think about it. So if I have to distill it down to one, I want to do more. How do I do that? I got to get leverage.
Can I do more with less? Man, Joel, you are off the hot seat. The lightning round is over. That was fire, brother. You're better at that than you thought you might be. Well, you gave us so many systems and frameworks that I know that our audience is going to start implementing immediately. I hope, at least. But if you're listening right now and if you've ever felt like you're the only one pushing the big old boulder up the hill, go back and re-listen to this episode, because what Joel just gave you is the execution framework that most leaders never even get access to. Joel, is there anything that you want to leave our audience with?
And just connect with me if you're interested in talking through any of this. Joel at thegrowthcentric.com. I'm sure we'll have that available in show notes or something. But one of my favorite parts about owning my own business is I get to spend my time how I want. And I like spending time talking to agents and team leaders. So whether you're interested in a fractional service or not, get on my calendar. Let's talk through where you're stuck or what you're thinking about. And it's one of my favorite things to do in my business right now.
As you guys can see, man, Joel is just an awesome guy. If this episode helps you guys at all, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen, drop a review, and send it to somebody else who's building their business right now, because this might give them the breakthrough that they need. I'm Mike Collier. This is the Leverage Lounge, and let's scale smarter.